A sneak peek at what's coming up next.
But that man who was CEO, okay, has children. That man has people who loved him, whether it's siblings, cousins, uncles, parents, and to be so dismissive of a human being's life. And then to have people vilify the guy who died and say that it was justified because you lost your cousin to cancer.
Because of the way the world is, sometimes you have to work within the system that exists in order to push your agenda.
But I think it's
like if you wanted to, if you're a socialist or you're a communist, right, and you really believe that we should have a communist society, or you really believe that we should go entirely socialist,
sure,
you have to work within the confines of the capitalist system that we work in. If you have shareholders that you're beholden to, and you have to try to make, they want to see profit year over year,
right?
In any given industry, there's only so many things you can do to try to make profit. And at some point you plateau and it's like, how do I make more money now? Well, you got to find new ways to, sometimes the answer is, well, I'm just going to start increasing prices. And I've seen companies do this that I've worked for where they'll start slowly introducing new fees, or they'll increase their prices over time because they need to find another way to keep increasing their quarterly revenue. Welcome to Verizon.
Is that like a slogan or something from Verizon?
It used to be the James Earl Jones commercials. It was like, welcome to Verizon.
Okay. All right. I actually think it's your topic.
Did you see the roast of 2024?
I did.
Yeah. I didn't think it was that funny.
So the vast majority of comics I thought were funny. I thought there were two people who were really trying hard. And that was one of my problems with their sets. I mean, their sets were not bad. It's just it felt forced, it felt pushed, it felt as if they were called last minute and they weren't able to refine their stuff well enough, because there was just a lot of like blunt hammer fucking roast jokes.
Yeah, I feel like I could have written better jokes than some of the people up there.
Yeah, so
as someone who's not a professional comedian.
So how do you feel about what's his name, Mark Norman? How do you feel about him? Because I'm like,
I feel like a lot of his jokes are kind of lazy.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying with that. There are times where I don't know if this is a reality of him as a human being or it's just the perception I get off of him, but I feel like he's just trying to get revenge for being, beat up and bullied in high school.
I don't know.
Like, I just get this vibe off him, and I could be out of my fucking skull with that. I mean, maybe he was liked. I don't fucking know.
I feel like he just relies too much on stereotypes and stuff like that.
Well, I mean,
like his jokes aren't super clever. I'm like, oh, okay. Like I already know the punchline before I hear the joke. You know what I mean?
At a lot of times. But then again, like we are comedy people, and so like maybe that plays into it. And I know he's popular.
Yeah.
I know he's a popular guy and he makes money at it, and good for you for working hard at a job and doing well enough where people pay you to do it. It's just every time I see a clip of him, every time I see him on a podcast or an interview or on a show like that or something, like I don't feel like the dude is really all that funny.
Yeah.
And it's not just like, I know people find him funny, so I'm not saying that like he's not funny, period, at all. It's just I don't necessarily, and it's not that I'm not getting his jokes, but it's kind of like what you were saying. I know where he's going with it, so like there's nothing special about the delivery. There's nothing special.
Well,
about
comedy,
the
a big factor in comedy is subverting your expectations and surprise.
Yeah,
and so he doesn't. It's not subverting my expectations because I already know what he's gonna say.
Right.
So that's why it's not funny.
But
also, like when he was on the roast the other night.
Yeah.
There was, what's the name of the female black comedian they had? I don't remember her name.
Oh, Miss Pat. Wait,
you
don't know who she is?
No.
Oh, shit.
No, so she did her.
She's fucking hilarious.
So she was standing next to him and he made like a classic, like, absent black father joke. Yeah. And I was like it wasn't funny because I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, did you see her facial reaction to it?
She was like,
yeah. She is hilarious. I liked watching her. God, what was the interview? She was on a podcast with somebody talking about her career and talking about how other people have helped her recently get a lot more exposure and whatnot. But like, she's super good, man. And like, one of the things that I really like about her is she plays on stereotypes, but like just enough to make it relatable and understandable.
Yeah.
But there are some things that she talks about that like it's almost harkens back to like George Carlin being real smart and kind of showing light to something. And I haven't
seen her
like
before until that.
I
didn't think her set was super funny, but I
she's
also
not
don't
really a roast
I
comic,
don't
though.
really know what her jokes are normally like. So
yeah, well, there's a couple of people, and maybe that's why I didn't really like what Mark Norman had to do, because it was Mark Norman and another guy who did a set together.
Yeah, but
right?
I thought both of their jokes were pretty lazy, and also the other guy, I don't remember his name. One of the jokes he said, I'm pretty sure he stole from Twitter or from like Reddit, because it was a joke that I've seen before online.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if either one of them are actually roast comics, though. like there's a difference when you're a roast comic, or you predominantly do a lot of roast stuff, and a comic who's just a funny guy who can write a clever joke and then trying to roast.
I didn't think the whole thing was really that funny. But I think if anybody, maybe Jeff Ross was probably the funniest, but the rest of them were kind of like, eh.
Yeah, I actually thought Jeff Ross like missed a step in that.
Yeah,
I actually think he's
normally
losing
funnier,
his edge.
but I still think out of everybody that he was probably better than the rest.
Yeah. Oh, he was definitely better than everybody else. So my problem with roast stuff nowadays is A, I think there's far too many people trying it and are doing it. And B, I think just the nature of roast comedy can only go so far. It's kind of like angry comedy from like the 90s. There's only so much of it people can tolerate before they go, all right, give me something else.
I thought the United Healthcare CEO thing was pretty clever. Like the guy.
Oh, that's Tim Dillon.
Him dressing up as the healthcare CEO.
Yeah.
It was a little dark, but
it was.
Because it just happened recently, but I still thought it was pretty funny.
No, I thought it was funny. There was a couple of jokes Tim Dillon did as the CEO that I thought were fucking hilarious. And then there was a couple of moments that I said that I thought that it was just in really bad taste.
Yeah.
But there was also some comments he made once he was off stage and he was sitting off to the side. There was a comment he made that I thought, that's just really in bad fucking taste. So it wasn't my preference, right? I'm not saying it wasn't funny, but it just wasn't my preference of something to say, because, and you know my opinion about it. I think the Luigi guy is a piece of shit and he shouldn't have killed another human being. And I get why he did it somewhat. And I understand why people are like standing behind this Luigi guy. I understand, because people are hurt by healthcare and they're fucking denied stuff, and relatives have died because a procedure or whatnot or a medication was denied. And I get people are angry about it. But that man who was CEO, okay, has children. That man has people who loved him, whether it's siblings, cousins, uncles, parents, had people who loved him, okay, and people he potentially loved. And to be so dismissive of a human being's life being taken from them, being taken from all those people who had nothing to do with the health insurance industry, and then to have people vilify the guy who died and say that it was justified because you lost your cousin to cancer is really, to me, horrible. And when people say things like this world is going to ruin, that to me is evidence of that. I usually don't think the world is going to ruin, and I don't think that humanity is lost or any of that other bullshit that a lot of people like to spew out about the world nowadays. But that to me is evidence that like the world has lost a step. When more people feel it justified to shit on somebody and not give a fuck about the impact that death is going to have. Now, should he have been brought up on charges for something? Probably. Should he be held accountable? Sure. Well, maybe. But to take his life doesn't just affect him.
The funny thing is, I'd have to pull it up right now because I don't have the information in front of me, but there's, according to what I've heard as far as polling goes, the majority of people actually don't feel bad for the guy at all.
No.
Like, and it's funny if you look at down like political lines.
Yeah.
It's people on the left and the right who
don't give a fuck that this human being lost.
But a lot of people on the left and the right, especially the populist left and right, I think there's kind of a disdain for corporations.
Yeah.
So it's not just like remember there was like the Occupy Wall Street and all those movements and stuff. And there's like the Bernie people for a while.
Mhm.
There's been this people on the left for a long time who have been like anti-corporation and all this stuff. But there's a lot of people on the populist right, especially like in the Trump people, who are also super like anti-big pharmaceutical and anti-corporation. Very skeptical of all that. So it's interesting to see that people on the left and the right like agreeing.
Okay. Can somebody, and you might be able to explain it because I know you live in that world a little bit more than I do.
Excuse me.
Actually, you live in that world a hell of a lot more than I do. Can you explain to me why some of these anti-capitalist people, anti-corporation people, why they still go on social media and fucking spout this shit? Because they're utilizing and creating revenue for the corporations in which they're speaking against. And on top of that, they're just giving angry rants about this shit opposed to doing something about it. And like this is amazing to me that all these anti-capitalist people go on apps.
Well, I don't think they're necessarily anti-capitalist. Some of them are. I think they're anti-corporatism. They're anti. So on the right, the people on the right will be against like against crony capitalism. They're complaining about companies and corporations that are too intertwined with the government or state officials. Corruption, stuff like that. And the people on the left are also similarly concerned, but the people on the left complain about. Excuse me, I'm like very congested today.
Get some water.
They complain about the way that the workers are treated, and also the way that a lot of these companies are. They get away with things that they probably shouldn't, or they damage the environment. You know, there's a lot of things that because they have so much money, they get away with that we wouldn't tolerate if it was a smaller company or somebody else, right? Because
that's my other problem with this too. Is we're only shitting on big ass companies. We're not shitting on all
I
companies.
didn't answer your question.
What? Oh, I thought you did. I'm sorry.
Well, you asked me about the social media. The reason why they go on social media and they use those platforms, even though like, you know, X is owned by the richest man in the world, right? You know, Elon Musk,
right?
Although there are some alternatives now, people are moving to Blue Sky and some of the other ones.
By the way, we have. Oh no, not completely. We're still on X, but I also created a Blue Sky account.
They use it because that's the only option that they have.
Yeah, it is.
So if you want to get your get your voice out there, you want to speak to people. The only options you have are to use like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of these these big platforms.
There are other ways to do it.
What? Go stand on the street corner like with a sign,
or so like. If you go, and I think they're starting to stray away from
and
this.
People do stand on the street corner.
Yeah, they do.
With signs.
If you go to music festivals, if you go to like pot organizational events and stuff. Now, granted, the marijuana industry is starting to corporatize and leaning in that other direction now, or at least they have been for the last couple of years. But if you go to those places, you're still going to find people who are of that world, right? Of that ideology in that direction. My problem is it seems really hypocritical to me that people make reels on Facebook talking about how horrible corporations are, and then they're like making their own fucking brand.
So I think that like unfortunately, because of the way the world is, sometimes you have to work within the system that exists in order to push your agenda.
But I think it's
like if you wanted to, if you're a socialist or you're a communist, right, and you really believe that we should have a communist society, or you really believe that we should go entirely socialist,
sure,
you have to work within the confines of the capitalist system that we work in. So sometimes you may have to use. You may have to utilize the benefits of companies or industries you don't like. Like a lot of people use iPhones, even though, you know, Apple has a lot of unethical practices.
Like
there's a lot
documented unethical
or we all
practices.
have to wear clothes, but a lot of clothes are made by people who are basically slave labor in Asia. But we don't have control over that. There's only so much we can do to replace our clothes with clothing that's ethical, right?
Yeah.
We still have to wear clothing.
Okay, so
there's only so much you can do to fight within the system that you're in.
And I understand
you have to
some
pick
of
your
those,
battles. Right?
Yeah, I understand some of those issues. It's just when people say they're anti-corporations, that all corporations are corrupt. So the local restaurant down the street is a corporation. A lot of them are
they might be
incorporated, right? There's good tax reasons for that. but you're shitting on them too. And I don't think you're actually talking about them, but a lot of people are just anti-corporations. They're all corrupt. All CEOs are bad. Really? Because they're not all bad. And I'm not trying to, stand behind every CEO, because there's a lot of CEOs who are pieces of shit.
No,
but they are
they
pieces
are
of shit as human beings.
From what I've seen, that there are certain people that, for one of the memes, or one of the ones that people point out, is the Arizona iced tea guy. You ever heard of that one?
Yeah, refusing to jack up his prices and shit.
Right. He's like, I made enough money, and they just leave it at that.
Sure.
So he's somebody that people point to and say, like, well, he's a CEO who wasn't super greedy. He made a good amount of money, and he's not jacking up the prices because he doesn't want people to have to pay more than what he thinks they should.
And also Arizona, tea is still popular somewhat, but it's not what it was. And he's getting older. Like, what happens to the company when he either has to or chooses to step away? On top of that, like, there's only so long you can sustain that way.
Yeah, well, like, with the current economic climate, especially with like inflation and everything, and
hey, inflation's down now. Didn't you hear?
It might be down a little bit, but it's still a lot higher than it was like 5 years ago. Like,
yeah, well, that's what happens.
Inflation,
like that,
yes, inflation is a normal thing, but it was the rate of inflation. We had a lot of inflation in a short period of time, and especially with the fact that like wages haven't really gone up much. So like people are making the same amount of money, but everything's just more expensive.
Yes, but apparently in 2025 it's going to reduce down even more, or at least it's projected to reduce down even more.
But it's also the effects of the increase of costs for supply chain, like shipping things. Just the cost of doing business in general has gone up. So to your point, what you were saying, eventually, like, you won't be able to charge 99 cents and actually be profitable.
Like, literally, you will not be able to sustain your company.
Yeah. But at least, it's a way to point to somebody who was successful but wasn't super greedy.
No, and I like the guy. I like watching. There was a clip of an interview of him, and he said, I'd rather take care of people in my company than screw people over.
Yeah.
He was like, I could make a lot more money if I just reduce down how much I pay everybody, but I'm not going to do that. And that's cool. And I love that he can make that stance, but he also had to get to a position to do so. And that's another thing too, is like, if you have a company and your company gets to a certain point, you can say shit like that and you can do shit like that. But getting up to that point,
well, it also depends on if you're a publicly traded company or not. If you have shareholders, then you're beholden to the shareholders.
You have to be. Because they can rip your company away from you, even though you own the motherfucker. And
what's interesting is if you have shareholders that you're beholden to, and you have to try to make, they want to see profit year over year.
Right.
In any given industry, there's only so many things you can do to try to make profit. And at some point you plateau, and it's like, how do I make more money now? Well, you got to find new ways to, I don't want to say rip people off, but sometimes they do. Sometimes the answer is, well, I'm just going to start increasing prices slowly. I'll add more fees here or there.
Right.
Or you have to find a new product or something to offer. But if there's nothing new to offer, you have to find other ways to make money. So you start slowly raising your prices or adding things in there. And I've seen companies do this that I've worked for, where they'll start slowly introducing new fees, or they'll increase their prices over time because they need to find another way to keep increasing their quarterly revenue.
Right. And I understand why they have to do it. I'm not necessarily agreeing with it, but I understand.
But I think that's part of the problem with capitalism in the model that we have, is once there's obviously benefits to having a stock market and having shareholders and all that stuff. But the downside of it is, like, at some point when you have this company that becomes so large and there's only so much they can do to increase revenue, they have to be creative, find ways to make more money. And one way you could go is maybe beneficial for humanity, which is coming up with new and better products.
Right.
The other way you can go is just to slowly start ripping people off, especially if you have no competition. Yeah. If you don't have somebody, like, any real competition, and you control most of the market. Yeah. And there's companies like that, like Google and Apple. Like, Apple has competition with Samsung, but really, like, in the US at least, Apple controls most of the market, right? Yeah. They can do whatever the fuck they want because they don't really have any real competition.
So I was having a conversation with somebody who claimed that they were pseudo anti-capitalist. or at least they don't like capitalism as an economic system. And I kind of pointed out that to a degree, capitalism itself is not the problem, but it's humans being involved.
I think,
because
sort of, I guess.
well, no, exactly what you just said. Without competition to drive your price down, people don't give a fuck and they just put it whatever they want. To me, that's a failure of people more so than the failure of the system, because why not just do it fairly anyway?
Right, but if they didn't have shareholders, then you might have people like the Arizona Iced Tea guy or other people who have started businesses who weren't greedy once they were successful.
Yeah, but
the problem is that like the United Healthcare guy, and other CEOs, if they have shareholders, they have to find ways to make that's their job. They have to find ways to make more money.
Right.
So if you're a profitable and sustainable business, and you're not publicly traded, if you don't have shareholders, then you can run it however you want. But if you're beholden to shareholders, you have to keep creating more revenue.
You have to continue to create revenue, but how much revenue? And that's the thing.
Sorry, revenue increases.
Yeah. But how much revenue of an increase, right? How much of an increase do you have to keep the shareholders?
I don't know. It depends on the
right?
business.
Well, but the reason why I bring that up is because the shareholders, being human, they don't give a shit what you have to do to make them more money. They just want you to make them more money. And that's it. Right?
Yeah.
But that's, again,
because
greed being involved.
But,
that's still the
sort of, but also
humans.
they've invested, a lot of these people have invested a lot of money into it. So obviously if I had $5 million to go invest in the stock market, and if I buy thousands of shares in whatever company, obviously I want them to make more money because I've invested all this money into it.
How much more money
and
do you want as a
lot
return?
of a lot of people who are super wealthy, super rich, a lot of their money is tied up in investments in stock.
Absolutely.
Like Elon Musk's wealth is like 99% in stock.
Yeah.
He doesn't actually have all that money.
No.
However, what he's at, like 250 billion, whatever he is.
Something like that.
However many billions of dollars. He doesn't actually have $250 billion.
Right.
It's tied up in equity in the company.
Yeah. The reason why I bring that up is because, like, I'm going to use your number of $5 million. If you invest $5 million in a company, okay, and your return is 6. Okay?
Wait, so you're talking about 1 million profit?
Yeah, that's it. You gained $1 million out of it. What the fuck is the problem with that? But that's part of my problem with human
I think
greed.
It also depends on what your expectations are when you put that $5 million in.
But that's what I mean. If people are only expecting a return in general, not necessarily double, triple their return, which is what they really actually are looking for, right?
I don't know enough about investing to know like what a reasonable return is. I mean, because I think when people are making money through stocks, most of the time it's not huge amounts like that. It's only if you're like an early investor or like people who are angel investors in companies and the company blows up. Then you make a ton of money if you get in early, or like the people who bought Tesla stock and stuff like that when it was very cheap. But like most of the time, you don't have, you're not doubling and tripling your money most of the time. I don't think.
So I'm gonna use this example from Shark Tank. I was watching a clip on Shark Tank, and it was this guy. I don't even know what the fuck the product was, but all the investor people were offering him and saying to him, "Your price point is too low. It should be more." Price point was $5.
Are you talking about the tree cone guy?
I don't know. I don't know who it is.
No.
Oh, here, just like I said, I don't know what product they were talking about. Anyway, it was like a dude talking about farmers and shit.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So anyway, he said my price point is $5. All of the other investor people, all 4 of the sharks, were saying do it at $12, $14, right? And his response was, but farmers can't afford that. I don't know if they can afford it. And all of them were like, whoa, but you got to do it that way. That's how we'll make money on it and all that kind of shit. And Mark Cuban said, bring it up to $7, right? $2 more than what you're already doing. Yeah, I don't.
You don't have to watch it. I'm just saying it's this guy. Yeah, I know.
We didn't need to even bring it up, actually.
I knew which one you were talking about.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that guy. So I don't even know what the product is, but my point is just this. All of these investor people, and they're very good at investing money. They've got companies, they make a lot of money. They're all telling him he's got to make double what, he's got to charge twice as much as what he's already charging for it, right? Because he's only making like $1 on the whole thing profit-wise. And they're saying, no, you got to make multiple dollars on it and all this other, like, to me, that's that shows the human problem in capitalism is not people just trying to make a profit, because making profit's good. It's people who are trying to make so much profit on it to get so much of a return that it screws people in the process.
Well, I think part of the problem with like the investors in Shark Tank and
Yeah.
in that scenario or any of those scenarios is that it has to be worth their time to get involved. And if you're going to be investing your resources and your time into it, there needs to be enough profit for them to be able to take a cut where like they can recoup their money and make some money. Because why am I going to, let's say my time is worth, let's say, because, you know, like, let's say I'm a billionaire and my time is worth X amount of dollars per hour, because anytime I'm actually working, I'm making X amount of money. If I stop to go do something else that's less profitable, I'm actually losing money because my time is worth more.
So that right there, again, shows to me, a bad trait in humans is they say, here's how much I make an hour. This is what I'm worth per hour. When what are they really doing? They're utilizing some experience that they've gained through their trial and error of making a business, and they're talking and they're making decisions.
Yes, but also at Shark Tank, they're investing money and sometimes they use their own resources. They're using their distribution centers. Like some of the
which
the
they
people on
already
Shark
have
Tank.
all of that already set up.
Right, but now they're using their companies. They're using money, time, and assets of their company, because it's not just using the asset, because using assets also costs money. Like if you're using somebody's distribution system, that's gas, that's wear and tear on the vehicles, that's all that stuff.
And I get there's a lot in that. I'm just talking about the person themselves. Okay, like. And I'm not trying to pick on the fucking four sharks. They're good business people. I don't know how ethical any of them are. I'm a big fan of Mark Cuban just because of some of the things I know he does that is actually rather cool.
Didn't he have that pharmaceutical drug company he made to make drugs cheaper
that
for
cut
people?
down a fuck ton of cost on them?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I love the shit out of that idea. But like that in itself is proof that you don't need to charge an asshole a lot of money.
So the excuse I hear about why pharmaceutical drugs are so expensive, to get back to healthcare. Anyway, the reason why pharmaceutical drugs are so expensive, at least for the argument that I've heard, has to do with, at least compared to other places. So pharmaceutical drugs are typically more expensive here. And then if you go into Europe or other places in the world, they get the same drugs that we do.
Right. But it's just cheaper. Like drastically
cheaper. And the reason I've heard for that is that it has to do with the type of trade agreements and deals we have. And they have laws in those countries that like restrict pricing on drugs.
Yes.
There's also generics, which the generic companies don't have to fund any of the research or development that goes into the drugs. So you have the big pharmaceutical companies who, I'm just giving you the devil's advocate argument.
I know what you're doing. I've heard this before.
The pharmaceutical companies invest a ton of money into research and development. They also have to go through the FDA. They have to go through all these hoops, right, to get their drugs approved and tested, and they have to pay for the research. And basically, the argument is that Americans end up footing the bill for that because we pay more here, so that the drug companies can recuperate all that money that they spend on the testing and getting it approved. And then when they send it overseas, the Europeans are paying less, and the Americans are footing the bill for all of the expense that goes into developing the drugs.
Sure.
And so the other other countries are benefiting from the research and development we do, because most drugs are not invented in other countries. Like some of them are, but like most drugs in the world are invented in the US.
Right.
And then European and other places will they'll develop generics. But they don't have all that cost that goes into research and development, basically.
So
because they're taking something that already exists and just making another version.
So
of it.
this might not be a question that can be answered by me and you. This might involve a Google search, which I don't care to do.
I'm right here.
Yeah, I know you're right there. I don't know if we can answer this, but how quickly do they want to recoup that money?
Oh, I don't know.
Like, what is the rate of recoup on that causes them to charge $600 to $800 a fucking EpiPen?
No, I think some of the stuff is definitely overpriced. I'm just saying that the other side of the coin, the argument is like there's a lot of R&D cost that goes into it.
No, and I understand there is, but my point is, and I think they need to recoup that because if all they're doing is shelling out cash,
they'll argue that these other countries. Their people are not paying for all the R&D because they're paying for generics, which are a lot cheaper.
I get all the rationale, and I get this is what they fucking say on a regular basis, but it's a matter of this. if you set your price to make sure you recoup what you spent in 5 years, okay, you could also reduce that price and work out that you'll recoup it in 10 years.
What their argument is
it's half the cost that way.
That these other countries that are these other countries and other places in the world, that they should pay a little more for the drugs, and Americans will pay less because that's about securing profit. That's not about like we have to pay more, because we don't actually have to pay more. They could just take longer to recoup their money, but that's a problem for them somehow. I think if you have to charge a drastic amount of money for a service because you need to recoup it that quickly, I think there's a problem with how much you're spending on it to begin with. By the way, if there's anything good that came out of the CEO shooting, it's all the Luigi memes. I think that's the only good thing that has and will come out of it. I think the Luigi memes are funny. Because I actually, I'm on the opposite side of you. I don't feel bad for the CEO. I know. I don't think that he should have been killed. Oh, okay. So you do agree. I don't think that he deserved to die, but I don't feel bad that he did. I do. It's a human life being taken. And a whole lot of people got negatively affected just because his company, which by the way, he was the CEO of a subgroup to an overall company. Yeah. Like, that's the other part of this too is... Have you seen the reasons why people were pissed off at United Healthcare? Yeah, because they denied some fucking claim, or because they made new policies that fucked up their ability to get some drug or some family member. There's a few of them. One of them had to do with a new AI system they used. That was I know. It denies more claims than it accepts. I get it. And then the other thing had to do with United Healthcare specifically. Mm-hmm. This has nothing to do with Luigi, but it's why people didn't feel bad. Is United Healthcare has... the highest percentage of denials, right? Like that has the highest denial rate. Yeah. And it's like double the industry average. Okay. The industry average, I think, is like 15 or 16% of claims, and they have like 32%. Right. Right. So it's like almost a third of their claims they deny. Okay. Which is pretty crazy. Okay. And I understand that negatively impacts a lot of people. But do his children, and I don't know how old they are, and I don't even know if he actually has children, by the way. He did. Oh, he does. Oh, good. How old are they? I don't know. Oh, okay. So does all of that rationale, which maybe he was given a directive from his boss, to do such a thing, we need you to implement this AI that's going to deny people. Maybe in that meeting, he said, yeah, but that means a lot more people are not going to have the procedure or the drug they need. And we don't know that conversation. Maybe he said that, but we look at him as the bad guy, knowing nothing about him, but we're more than okay with his children bawling their fucking eyes out because they lost their father to some asshole who got denied something. You know what's funny is I've been watching a lot of Destiny lately again. Yeah. I've been listening to him on the way to work and the way home from work. Right. And he actually pretty much agrees with you as far as the CEO thing. Yeah. And one of his arguments is that Americans have too high of expectations when it comes to healthcare. I think Americans have too high of an expectation about a lot of shit. He's saying that because even all the problems that we have in our healthcare system, that we still have better care than a lot of other places in the world. And he's saying that insurance companies deny certain things because you don't necessarily need to have the most advanced and the best treatment for everything. Right. Maybe the treatment that's been around for 30 years and is tried and true, but it's not the most recent, most advanced thing, is not what you need, especially if it's like 10 times the price. Yeah. He's saying that, like, do you really, like, these insurance companies deny a lot of things because maybe it's not 100% medically necessary, or maybe like you can't expect to always have the best and latest treatment available and to make it cheap and free. He's like, people want to have everything. You can't have it be affordable or free and quick and have the best treatment available. There has to be, you have to have one of those things. You have to get rid of one of those things, right? Yeah. So that was his argument. Because he's been arguing with a lot of people because he's more left leaning. Yes. And he's been arguing with a lot of other lefties because a lot of them are more on my side. Right. And that's his argument, is that, like, Americans' expectations are out of whack. They expect too much.
Yeah.
And like even with countries that have socialized medicine,
Mm-hmm.
those governments aren't going to always approve for you to have the latest, greatest treatment for everything because you have to control the price somehow.
Right.
Otherwise, your taxes and all the expenses you have are going to be way out of control.
Right. Which is why they control the drug price.
Also, I didn't know this, but one of Destiny's arguments also has to do with apparently the healthcare industry. Health insurance is regulated much differently than the other insurances.
Yeah.
And insurance companies are actually only allowed to make a certain percentage of profit, which I didn't know that.
Wait, health insurance companies?
Yes, health insurance companies, as part of the Affordable Care Act, when Obamacare.
Oh, I didn't know that.
As part of the Affordable Care Act, and I'd have to look it up. I think it's something like 80 something or 80 to 80 something % of all the money that a healthcare insurance company takes in has to go back to the people, their customers. And actually, if a health insurance company makes too much money, they actually have to give money back to the people that they insure.
So you're telling me there's already something on books that says the majority of money that a healthcare company makes, they have to shell out.
Yeah, I'm gonna, because
You're fucking telling me there's already regulation in it, and people think these, like, people, of course they don't know it because, well, most Americans are fucking dumb as shit, including myself and including Steve at times.
I'm sure there's ways they try to get around it, though.
Of course there are. Because every human being tries to find a loophole. Even everybody who's poor as fuck and wants to blame everybody else for their fucking problems, they also try to
80% of their premium income on medical care and quality improvement care.
Holy shit.
85% of their premium income on medical care and quality. So for large group plans, so individual plans, it's 80%, and large group plans, 85%. So that means that they 80 to 85% of their premium that they charge has to go back.
It says has to go to medical care and quality improvement
efforts. Yeah.
Yeah. I would love to see what the description of that actually is, because I'm betting there's a whole lot of loopholes just in the vagueness of that. But hold on, before we get too much into it, I don't want anybody to think that, like, I think health insurance is a good thing, because I don't. I'm actually more of a fan of, like, fucking what is it called, single payer or universal health care, like all that jazz. I'm more of a fan of that stuff.
Single payer just is like where the government pays for your insurance. So you pay taxes, or you pay tax to the government, and the government pays for your insurance.
Like in Italy, right?
I don't know.
Sweden,
I know they have some sort of socialized medicine, but I don't know. Single payer.
Yeah, I'm more of a fan of that stuff, and I would.
Well, you would still have private doctors. You would still have hospitals privatized. But single payer just means that the government is now your insurance.
Yeah. Okay.
Like Mass Health.
Yeah.
Actually, well, Mass Health actually.
No, Mass Health is a conglomerate of a bunch of different health insurance.
I don't think it used to be, but it is now. And in fact, that's what Trump wants to do. I think Trump wants to make Medicare and other forms of, like, government healthcare that the government does run.
Yeah.
They want to expand the privatization of it, meaning, like, they would basically, you would still pay taxes to it, but then you have a private insurance company run it.
I fucking hate that idea.
Which is what Mass Health does too now, because if you have Mass Health, or I think even Rhode Island, if you have the government health insurance, the taxes pay for it, but then they give you, like, a United Healthcare card, or they give you
or Tufts or Stewart Health, which are all just fucking garbage.
But it's covered through one of those companies instead of the government doesn't run. The government isn't paying?
No, they're a go-between.
Yeah, they basically they have a third party that does it.
Which I don't like the way that works, because they end up it's.
But I could be wrong on that. But I think Mass Health used to be paid directly by the state, because I can remember, like, years and years ago when it first came out.
Yeah.
Because it came out before Obamacare. Yeah. It was Massachusetts was one of the first states to do it, I think. And I'm pretty sure, because I had people in my family who had it back then, and I think it used to just be a Mass Health card. And I think that if you went to the doctor, it was literally paid right through, almost like an EBT card. Like, it was paid right through the state, or it was billed to the state. But I think now it's in Mass, at least.
Yeah,
I could be wrong
on any of that.
I don't know all the nuances of it, but
I had an option too, because I was fucking poor enough for a lot of that stuff at one point in life. But I never got on any of it. But I also didn't see a doctor for fucking 13 years.
So we need more Luigis.
What? Oh, good God. But also, like, what benefit has happened because of it? None. Like, no health insurance company's been like, oh shit, we might lose our lives. Let's change some policies. Nobody's done that. Like, fuck. I mean, days after it happened and shit, one of the insurance companies fucking changed their anesthesia, put you to sleep fucking med policy. And like, granted, they retracted it really quickly, but they put it out there and then they re-put it out like a week later. Like, it didn't change the way anybody did business. It didn't cause anybody more fear. It didn't cause anybody to rethink or reevaluate their fucking profit line. It's also all it did was take the life of a human being who was loved by others. So all of those people who loved that man, fucking, they get to feel like shit, get to be negatively impacted the rest of their fucking life because this dude was doing his job.
Well,
granted, he had a shitty fucking job, but he was doing his goddamn job.
I don't think that if it was going to have an impact, I don't know if it would so soon after it happened. Like it's a recent thing.
Yeah.
I think if you were going to see change, that it would take a while for that, or you would need more CEOs to die.
Well, but
I think if you want violence to be a solution for it, instead of protesting or voicing your opinion in other ways, or what do you call it, lobbying the government for change, if you wanted to use violence, you would have to kill more CEOs for it to be effective. I think you would actually have to go out and take out more people for them to actually be scared and want to change.
Which we are not advocating for.
No, but I'm saying just taking out one is not gonna. But maybe you'll see copycats. Maybe you'll see other people do it. Now
and then those assholes should just be fucking 25-cent bullet to the brain. And no, that's not a solution for it either. But even if somebody plotted, planned, and took out every sitting CEO right now of every major health insurance company, it's not going to fucking change anything because they're still beholden to stock shareholders. They're still beholden to their parent companies. Okay. And as well as there's always some motherfucker directly below them that wants that fucking job. And they're going to think they're smarter than the last guy. And they're going to say, no, I'll just get more security. No, I'll do this. I'll do that.
All right, Destiny. Calm down now.
I'm just saying there's always somebody else, right? Like it's to go back to my favorite thing, comic books, right? If you cut off one head, two come up. Fucking Hydra. And you might think that they are evil and horrible for doing what they're doing. But I will say this. Everybody, every human being, and this might sound really cynical about people, but thank you, world, for making me such. And I'm choosing it. But everybody cuts corners somehow. Everybody does to save a dime. Everybody fucking does. Everybody cuts corners to try to get a little ahead all the time. And some would say that that's the nature of the system, but no, it's actually not. That's people. That is people trying to avoid going the hard way. And I do it too, by the way. I am not immune to this. I am not, better than any of what I'm talking about. I do it too. Okay. There are days I'll go get coffee from Cumberland Farms opposed to Starbucks, even though I prefer Starbucks coffee because it's cheaper at Cumberland Farms.
Yeah.
Now that is a really shitty minor example.
It's also faster.
That's also faster. But that's
for me,
the point. It's still cutting a corner.
Yeah.
It's still trying to make things easier for myself.
I wouldn't do that just because I don't like Cumby's coffee.
Well, you're also kind of pretentious about coffee. I hold no...
Cumby's coffee to me just tastes like water.
Yeah, whatever. Regardless of the preference there, I'm just saying that we all do things to cut corners. Okay? Yeah. We all do. There are days where some people won't take a shower because they're running late because they wanted to sleep 5 minutes longer. Right? Ew. That's also cutting corners.
I've actually gone to work 5 minutes late because I was running late and I still took a quick shower. Mm-hmm. And I told my boss, I'm like, hey, I'm a few minutes late, but I was running late and I took a shower. If I didn't take a shower, I could have been here on time, but I didn't want to come in smelly. So
I have gone into jobs without showering for 3 days straight because I was lazy as fuck and I didn't want to wake up on time. I'm just going to say it what it is.
You stinky son of a bitch.
Whatever. I don't give a fuck. I was cutting corners and shit. I was not at one point in life, I did not have the ethics, morals, and or integrity.
Where does that term come
now.
from?
What?
Cutting corners.
Cutting corners?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. You can look that.
I
up.
wonder
I don't
what.
know where that phrase came from.
Sometimes I wonder where certain like.
I
and
wonder all the time,
sometimes
too.
the origins of the phrases are not what you would think.
Yeah. Oh,
like
absolutely.
I found out not too long ago that brakes on a car come from brakes that they used on cattle, which were these things that went around their neck.
Okay.
And so when they switched from using carriages to cars, they kept the term brake, even though a brake was something you put around the neck of an animal
To slow it down.
Yeah, which I thought was interesting. But it's like also like a dashboard in your car.
Yeah.
Dashboard on a carriage was something that collected mud, so it didn't fly up in your face.
Yeah.
But it was called the dashboard because I forget, but dash actually meant something.
Okay.
Dash had something to do with mud coming up.
Yeah.
But now they kept the name of it, but it has nothing to do with the origin of the word.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I mean, all of those phrases I find interesting because my first reaction is to think about them literally first and foremost. So when you just said, what does that mean to cut corners? I immediately thought, hey, round off a corner on a table. That was my first thought because I used to woodwork. But everybody does cut corners and everybody tries to make a quick buck. Everybody tries to gain as much as they can monetarily, right? Or even if it's not monetarily, there are other ways people try to get a leg up on other people with skills, with friendships, with status of all different types. And some people would say that that's a symptom or a side effect of capitalism. And you can say that, sure. But I think it's human weakness that has created a lot of that. I think it's humans being involved in anything that fucking screws something up. And you can call it corruption if you want. I'm just going to say screw it up. I like.
Well, maybe if enough CEOs die, then you see some change.
Yeah, but I don't think that change is going to change the way people think.
It's not going to change humanity.
Well, I also don't think it's going to change the healthcare system.
So, in the same token, then you don't think it would be possible for us to have a Star Trek communist utopia?
Unfortunately, I would love to have that just because I'm a huge fan of Star Trek, and I have hope that human beings can rise up to that level of integrity and ethics, but I also understand full well that people are not capable of it. I think we can get close, but I think everyone can be corrupted. I think all human beings can be manipulated, can be corrupted, can be convinced that something is ethical when it's really not. And I think all people can be convinced to morally betray themselves.
It reminds me of the shopping cart test, the shopping cart theory.
Oh, like leaving shopping carts in the parking lot?
It's a test of it's a test of like people's character and like anybody who's not willing to put the shopping cart back is somebody who you would probably struggle in a society where we have to depend on each other because you're not willing to do the simplest thing
for another human being.
Right.
I agree with that because I always put the shopping cart back in the shopping cart spot.
Yeah.
One, because that's where it goes. So, there's that rigidity in thinking, but also a matter of like somebody's got to collect them.
Yeah.
And somebody's got to park and somebody needs it for when they go shopping. And I always think about all that stuff.
It's the right thing to do, but there's also no consequences if you don't do it. That's the problem.
So that's the difference between...
Are you going to do the right thing when there's no consequences if you don't?
So this is where I'm going to stand up and say that I do feel, in that regard only, I do feel like I'm better than a whole lot of people. Not everybody and not the vast majority of people, just a lot of people.
What we're talking about requires people to do the right thing, even when
nobody's looking, which is called integrity. Right. That's what integrity means. And unfortunately, people don't have integrity all that much anymore. I learned it through the military. And granted, they're not the best at integrity either. But that's where I learned the concept. That's where it got reinforced in me. So, yes, I put the shopping cart back where the fuck it goes. Whether it's right or wrong, I don't care. It's a matter of I think about other people and the impact that I have on them. Now, granted, this is also coming from the guy who is a self-prescribed asshole. And I hardcore believe that my words, whether it emotionally affects you or not, is your problem, not mine.
So this is what I've heard from people who...
So take it for what it is.
People who don't put the shopping cart back, here's what they say.
Yeah.
Because these are the arguments I've heard.
Yeah.
Well, one, obviously, we're not talking about people, if you have a disability or something and it's physically hard for you to put the cart back, it's more understandable. But if you're physically capable of doing it and you don't have a physical handicap that prevents you from putting it in there.
Yeah. If you just don't feel like it,
you're just lazy.
Yeah.
Well, the argument I've heard is, well, somebody gets paid to do that.
Oh, so you're passing the buck of responsibility on somebody else. In fact, actually, their job is not to walk the entire fucking parking lot and clean up after you, you fucking child. Their job
It's like
is
when
to
people
walk-
make a big mess in the movie theater.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
like leave trash or they throw
Right.
shit on the floor. Well, somebody gets paid to clean that up.
Well, actually, they have a lot more of a responsibility than you and taking care of your shit, you fucking man-child.
Like, yes, they do get paid to clean it up, but you're making
it harder than what it should be.
and it's easy for you to clean up after yourself.
Yeah, you bought it. You brought it into theater. Fucking throw it away.
know people who, this is another one that bothers me,
Mhm.
is people when they go through the grocery store
Yeah.
and they decide they don't want something and they just throw it wherever.
Put it wherever the fuck. Yeah, well, because somebody has to organize it.
Especially like if it's something perishable,
put it back where
like
you got
eggs,
it.
eggs, milk, cheese, something like that, and they just throw it in the middle of an
God.
aisle. So now you get something that's perishable just sitting in the aisle. And then they say the same thing. Well, it's somebody else's job to do that.
So I was grocery shopping with Nat a couple weeks ago. We didn't have kids in the house on a Friday during the day when she had the day off of work. And we went to the grocery store, right? We're walking down the aisles and we were doing it Natalie's way because apparently my way irritates her and her way doesn't make sense to me. But we still did it her way because I'm not going to argue with my wife all that often. Anyway, we're walking down the cereal aisle and right next to a box of fucking Cheerios, okay, is a pot roast.
Yeah.
Just pot roast in the package, sitting right there on the shelf. And I can see it getting all gray and shit. So it's been there for a while. No employee has grabbed that shit off the shelf. And I'm betting money tons of them have walked past it. No other human being has moved it off of there. And then people complain that prices are higher.
Yeah.
Loss is part of the reason why prices are up.
Yeah,
Because-
but that's probably not the majority
No,
of it.
it's not the majority. I'm saying it's included
I
in
think
the
the
price.
majority of it is one, it's obviously the cost of
all of the other stuff they have to spend
the
on
cost of the product itself has gone up and transportation distribution costs
Like
has
I
gone
said,
up.
all the extra stuff.
Inflation.
But loss
Plus-
is part of it. Loss is part of it. And did you know that
Plus
a lot
greed.
of companies? Yeah, great. I've been mentioning greed a lot lately. Did you know that loss, not just stealing, but loss in general, okay, especially for grocery stores, is actually up quite a bit from like fucking
I think
2 years ago?
I think a
or
lot of
3 years ago?
people, well, this is
Like-
speculation on my part, but I've heard a lot of instances of like theft has gone up in a lot of places, and I think people just don't give a fuck. I think there's less sympathy for the company.
Right.
So it's kind of like in those situations where if you're poor and you're starving and people are stealing food to survive, and
Mm-hmm.
we, as most people, are willing to look, turn a blind eye
Yeah.
to somebody who's stealing if they're needy,
Okay.
right? I think that there's less sympathy for the companies
Yeah,
because
yeah.
people are struggling, and it's harder for people to feed their families.
Yeah. So I want to point this out, and this is my personal opinion. I've never looked this shit up. I'm just looking at brief little clips that I see on whatnot and news and magazine articles. I'm not looking at like fucking real statistics on this shit. So somebody can probably prove me fucking wrong easily. But in my opinion, the vast majority of theft that is out there is not because somebody's poor and trying to feed their family. And here's why I say that. When I used to work retail, I did not work in anywhere that had food or clothing for that matter, but people stole shit constantly. When I see a lot of clips, and granted, those clips are specifically, whatnot, I see people stealing cell phones from the Apple store. You ain't feeding your family off a fucking iPhone.
Well, the thing that's dumb about stealing phones, as somebody who has worked in the wireless industry for many, many years, is that as soon as you walk out the door with those phones, they're immediately blocked.
Right. Like you can't do shit. It becomes a fucking paperweight. How about the group of women? It was in California somewhere. They walked into a high-end shoe store and just start running out with a bunch of high-end shoes. Who the fuck is buying that from you? You're going to make what? $15, $10, $20 on a pair of fucking boots?
I don't know. I mean,
your ass can go to jail for a decade because you stole a fucking $120 pair of boots and you're selling it for $20.
I'm also not like, I'm not going to judge somebody not being in their position or living in their shoes. So
I've been homeless. I have had a lack of money to the point where I bought shit like food-wise. I didn't just live off ramen. I had to live off less than ramen, let's say.
You know
let's just say.
A few years ago when I was broke, I would go to the grocery store and the Stop and Shop near me would always have discount meat.
Yeah.
And I was able to get like a package of pork chops for $3.
Yeah.
Or 4 or 5 pork chops.
And you throw it in your freezer.
Throw it in the freezer. Yeah. And so I'd have a meal that cost me literally like $1.50 to make a pork chop and like a potato.
I'll also say this. From the videos that I've seen, again, those are probably cultivated and algorithmy and all that shit. But when you're wearing a pair of Jordans and you're stealing a pair of Jordans, I have less sympathy for you. When you look like you got a place to shower and do your laundry, I have less sympathy for you than the homeless man or woman or homeless person who is begging on the street for $1 to get a cup of coffee or a donut. I have less sympathy for you when you look like you did your laundry this week and you're stealing fucking iPhones. Okay. If you were homeless and you were that goddamn hungry, I actually think it should be illegal that Dunkin' Donuts has to throw out all their donuts at the end of the day.
So we used to give away stuff back when I worked at Dunkin',
right?
But they had to stop doing it for legal reasons
because of an asshole.
I
remember some of it.
Yeah, so they started giving it away to pig farms. So what they would do is they give it away, the old donuts and stuff. They give it to farms and they use it as pig slop.
Yeah,
to feed it to the pigs.
And also they started throwing that shit out.
Sometimes
I heard
some places will
somebody sued them for like a homeless person.
They figured it's not worth the liability, so you just throw it out.
Like, here's the thing. I really think that it should be illegal to throw that shit out, and I don't think the company should be held liable if you're eating a day-old fucking donut, okay? Or if you're given bread from the local bakery, I don't think you should be able to sue them if you know full well that bread is 3 days old, okay? But they should be able to give it to a local homeless shelter if they want to. And if the person at the homeless shelter is willing to fucking eat it, fucking let them eat it. I know I ate. So I was on a road trip.
I think the problem you run into that, what if the place that's donating the food is negligent and they're doing unsafe health practices and then somebody gets sick and now you're saying, well, they can't sue them because they're homeless.
Hold on. No. I'm not saying because they're homeless.
No, because they got it donated to them.
But that you also just mentioned like more of a situation where they should be held liable. They're purposely knowing, right? Like if I take the donuts that were made that morning off the fucking shelf and I walk over to the homeless shelter and go here and people start eating them, they're not toxic. They're not dangerous. They're not bad for people's health.
No, I'm just saying that you could create situations where it's hard for that person to get compensation when it was negligence on the company.
Yeah, when it was purposeful negligence.
Because now how do you prove that the place that is making the food has unsafe health practices and they contaminated the stuff, not necessarily on purpose, but just out of negligence?
So this is part of the problem and why we have to throw away so much fucking food.
Yeah.
Is because a couple of times somebody abused some shit and somebody got hurt because of it.
Well, I wanted to go back to the grocery store thing for a minute because there's something I wanted to mention that we didn't get to. But did you know, because we were talking about part of the reasons why groceries and certain things are so expensive has to do with greed.
Yeah.
Did you know that Stop and Shop actually got in trouble recently for price gouging?
Yes.
Because they were charging different prices for the same products in certain locations based on where the store was.
Yeah.
And certain products were more expensive in poorer areas. I've also noticed that certain ethnic products are more expensive at certain Stop and Shops. Because I like to make a lot of different types of food. I like to make a lot of Asian food, Indian food, and or Mexican food even. I can't buy those ingredients at certain Stop and Shops. I actually will, if I want to make curry or something, I'll go to the Asian market and buy herbs and like curry paste or sriracha or fish sauce. I bought fish sauce there. I'll buy all that stuff there because it's a normal price. Stop and Shop will charge double or triple the price for the same product. And I know maybe their distributor charges more, possibly, but I doubt that what if they have any extra expense that like, how is this mom and pop Asian grocery store charging $2 for something that you're charging $8 for?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
So, So I honestly think that if you go to Stop and Shop to buy some of that stuff and you know full well it's more expensive because you heard it here, it is. if it's more expensive there and you still buy it there, you're an asshole.
Well, they do it because
Like-
people do it because it's out of convenience. Because now I don't want to have to go to another store.
Oh, you mean cutting corners, making shit easy for themselves, but spending more money to do it? Go to the Asian market and benefit somebody who could actually use your fucking money.
Well, that's what I do.
Like, I
refuse to buy that stuff well, first of all, they don't even have a lot of the good products. It's like,
no.
And then the products they do have are just ridiculously expensive. Like, I'm not paying, like, the price of sriracha is ridiculous now. Like, if I want to buy a bottle of sriracha sauce,
because it's popular.
let's say they charge $12-15 for it.
Yeah.
And if I go to the Asian market, it's $6 for the same bottle. I'm like, why is it double the price?
Because they can.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's because it's in those stores, it's a specialty product because not as many people are buying it. But I feel like they price gouge on those items.
Well, and also the companies that are putting their stuff in Stop and Shop and Walmart and stuff like that, they have to pay to have the spot on the shelf, right?
Now, somebody might be able to prove us wrong who's involved. Maybe there's a manager for Stop and Shop who knows what the actual cost is.
Right.
Or maybe it's a P&L scenario. Maybe they're losing too much money if the product sits there too long.
Yeah.
Profit and loss.
Yeah.
Maybe if the product sits there too long, they're losing money, so they have to charge more. Because, sometimes products that don't sell as well, you have to charge more for it because they take up inventory space.
Yep.
Maybe there's stuff like that going on, and I'm just being too
I like
judgmental.
how you're giving the companies credit.
Because I'm saying that there's probably factors I don't know.
There probably are.
But just from the consumer standpoint, I feel like I'm getting fucked.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? We started this conversation of me defending corporations and you.
Oh, I'm not defending. I'm just saying that there's.
Well, no, you're giving a little bit of credit and saying in good faith that there might be other considerations that we don't know about that are legitimate ethical reasons. And it could also be because they're assholes.
But it's probably a mix of both.
Yes.
Like with
because it's humans that are running it.
You've heard of like shrinkflation.
Yes.
And you've heard probably of like
why do we need kitschy names for
some of the price increases on groceries? There are more costs on the end of the suppliers and the distributors, right? Yeah. But that doesn't mean that they're not also raising prices on top of it.
Yeah, well,
it's like an excuse for them to make more profit because it's like my cost went up $1, but I'm going to charge you $6 more.
Right? Like, why not? If your cost goes up by $1, now you increase by $2. Why you got to increase by $6? Well, because we're trying to maximize our profit, motherfucker. Like. All right. So also the Asian store you're talking about, the Asian market there, they're probably not charging.
Have I taken you there?
No, and I would like you to.
Oh, it's down the street.
They're probably not charging as much money for shelf space or at all charging.
I like
for
shopping
shelf
there
space
because the
as
stuff
Stop and Shop and
the
Walmart
prices
do.
are so reasonable.
Yeah,
especially if you like for your kids, like getting snacks and stuff. Like they have all the
gonna glaze over what I said.
All the Asian snacks, like the rice cookies and all that, the gummy.
Yeah, they're good. I've been to Asian markets before. Yeah. But again, they might not be charged as much, or they might not be charging as much to put product on their shelf. They might not even be charging at all to put product on their shelf, which is why the products are cheaper.
Yeah.
And I have somebody in my family who helps with that logistics of like telling stores and convincing stores to put X amount of product on the shelf and shit. And the company has to buy that.
They also have less labor costs because at least the one that I go to.
You're talking about the Asian market?
Yeah. The one that I go to, I'm pretty sure it's run by a family.
Yeah, okay.
So they're just paying themselves.
Yeah.
Versus like Stop and Shop, they have a union.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much they make.
Union.
I don't know how much but I'm just saying that like their labor cost is probably higher. So obviously if your labor cost is higher,
right,
you're going to have to charge more as well.
Yeah.
But so like there's legitimate reasons why prices have to go up. You can't have low prices and high labor cost because at some point
I understand. I get it. But I also know
that's why Aldi is able to charge less because they have fucking 2 people working. When you go to an Aldi, there's like 2 or 3 people fucking working in the whole store.
And also some of their food tastes like shit.
Well, some of it's lower quality stuff, but I actually found out did you know there's 2 different Aldis?
No.
So the Aldi
so there's Aldi's that makes money
Germany,
and there's Aldi's that doesn't?
Aldi was founded in Germany.
Oh.
And they have it was made by 2 brothers. And eventually at some point the brothers had a disagreement and they separated. And in Germany there's Aldi South and Aldi North.
Uh-huh.
Aldi South is the Aldi that we have here in America. And in Germany they have 2 different kinds of Aldis. And it's funny is their logos are similar but just different colors.
Oh.
And Aldi North, they carry slightly different products, but Aldi North owns Trader Joe's.
Really?
So Trader Joe's and Aldi are both technically Aldi, but Trader Joe's is owned by Aldi North from Germany, and Aldi in America is Aldi South in Germany.
Huh.
Yeah. And that's why they have very similar models.
Yeah.
Although Trader Joe's, I will say, they actually have cashiers, though, when you go there. Like, if you go to Aldi, they always have one person.
Yeah.
And if you go to Trader Joe's, they always have the cash registers full of people. And they bag your crap for you.
Yeah.
Which is nice. But they're also a little bit more expensive. Like, I thought, before I went to a Trader Joe's, I thought they were, like pricey, but they're really not. Their prices are very similar to Aldi. Some of the stuff might be a little more expensive, but I thought they were, like, expensive before.
Trader Joe?
Yeah,
I thought they were too.
They're not. They're not.
Oh.
No, they have a lot of stuff that's very reasonable price, and a lot of the stuff is cheaper than your normal grocery store. It's very similar to Aldi, price wise. There is some stuff that's a little more expensive. They have some some of the fancier products and stuff that's like more expensive, healthier stuff. But they also have a lot of stuff that's just cheap. Like you can buy a big box of frozen stuff for $5 and whatever.
Okay.
Before we're already at over an hour, so before we continue, I wanted to bring back our Ask an Asshole segment.
Yeah, let's go back to that.
So before we started recording,
I guess this is a fun dick around episode.
No, we've been pretty focused on capitalism.
Yeah. Like we had topics in there, but like we had topics like we do. So we kind of jumped around a bit. And for anybody who's new to this show and you're listening to this episode and going, what the fuck is this show about? That's what it's about. It's about me and Steve talking about shit.
All right, I got a couple of these.
Sometimes we talk about autism, but sometimes we don't.
All right.
Okay.
So it's time for Ask an Asshole. I'm going to ask Nick. I'm going to read him a scenario from Reddit. Am I the asshole? And Nick, being our resident asshole, is a self-proclaimed asshole, is going to tell us whether he thinks the person's an asshole.
I mean, self-proclaimed and told by most people. So,
all right,
especially when I was younger.
His first one. Am I the asshole for suing my neighbor after their kid trespassed and fell into my koi pond? I, 22 male, have a koi pond in my backyard. It's not just any koi pond. It's a full-blown, professionally designed Japanese garden with a bridge, waterfalls, and koi that cost more than my car. I'm talking $1,000 for a single fish. Maintaining this pond is my pride and joy. I put years into this hobby, and my yard is securely fenced with no trespassing signs everywhere. Enter my neighbor, Karen. Fake name, but fitting. Karen has a son. Let's call him Timmy, 8-year-old male, who is notorious for wandering into other people's yards uninvited. I've talked to Karen multiple times about this, but she just brushes it off as kids will be kids. Last week, while I was out running errands, I got a frantic call from Karen. Apparently, Timmy climbed over my fence to feed the fish, even though I have explicitly told him to stay out. In doing so, he slipped, fell into the pond, and destroyed part of my carefully maintained ecosystem. Several of my prize koi died due to stress, and the filtration system was damaged because of the debris Timmy kicked in. Luckily, Timmy wasn't seriously hurt, just a few scrapes. But Karen has been demanding I pay for his medical bills. She claims my pond is an attractive nuisance and that I should have had a cover or something to prevent kids from falling in. I argue that 1, it's private, fenced property, and 2, her son had no business being there in the first place. When I refused to pay, Karen lost it and started bad-mouthing me to the whole neighborhood, calling me heartless and a terrible person. I've since filed a lawsuit against her for the cost of the koi, the damage to my filtration system, and the repairs to my pond, over $5,000 in total. Some of my friends think I'm taking it too far, saying he's just a kid, but others agree that Karen should have been watching him better. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for suing my neighbor after her kid trespassed and destroyed my koi pond?
Okay. So I do like how there's 62,000 fucking likes on that. Which I don't know if people hit like because they think he's an asshole or if they're hitting like because they agree with him. I just think it's interesting that 62,000 fucking people read that shit and were like, well, let me hit like for some reason. Or is that just 62,000 reactions?
62,000 upvotes.
Upvotes, okay. So here's... I'm going to say this guy is a super asshole. And for one, you are a pretentious prick. Like, I don't know who you are, never met you a day in my life, but based on the way that you wrote that and based on some of the things you found important in that motherfucker, you are a pretentious asshole.
Also, he's a 22 male, the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
What kind of 22-year-old has a fucking full Japanese koi pond with a waterfall and a bridge in their backyard?
I don't know. Here's what I know. He just said some of those koi cost more than a car, which means you've got money to replace that shit.
Well, actually, to be fair, he said he's talking about the koi plural. He's saying some of the individual fish cost like $1,000. He's saying the total number of fish costs more than his car.
Again, you got money.
Yeah.
Again, to maintain that precious ecosystem, you got money, which means replacing that shit is just time and energy for you. A kid got hurt, and I don't know nothing about that kid. Like, did that kid wander in your backyard because that kid's got some developmental issue going on and dude just wanted to get near fish? Okay, then I don't blame the kid at all. Even if the kid has nothing going on and just felt like going in your back fucking yard, I agree with the mom. Kids are kids. Like, I've never known a kid to fucking listen that hardcore to any parent. Well, I mean, if the kid was abused enough, I see that. But this kid doesn't sound like he was. And again, they're fucking fish. Okay, I got it. You cultivated this thing and you spent years building this fucking Japanese fucking cultural appropriation fucking backyard environment, but you got the money to deal with that. And on top of that, like, I remember years ago, if a kid or an animal wanders into your backyard and slips and falls in your pool and gets hurt, they can sue you for that, even though the kid is trespassing. So in that regard, you are still liable for the fucking medical bills, guy.
You know what's funny is it seems in this particular instance, the majority of people disagree with you.
I don't give a shit.
Most people say that he's not the asshole.
I don't give a shit.
The mom needs to supervise her kids better.
So that's just it. We don't know the mom situation either.
Well, here's the thing:
like, there are reasons why mom ain't right next to that kid, glued to his hip 90% of the time.
If this guy has all this money and he's rich,
yeah,
it would make sense that his neighbors might also have money as well. If he's
maybe
because if he has all this money and a fancy koi pond in his backyard, he probably lives in a good neighborhood.
Maybe
because you can't just build a fancy Japanese koi pond if you live in the city.
No. Like, this is definitely a suburb, and I don't know what level of suburb. Like, I don't know if it's upper middle class or even wealthy. But at the same time, though, like, that mom and anybody who's a parent knows this. You cannot be next to your kid 100% of the time. Like, you can't. You got to go to work, or you have other kids, or you have stuff going on, which is another reason why I would I would probably bet that there's more going on with that woman and her kid than just she wasn't watching her kid and she was negligent. Like, perhaps maybe this guy who's next door is, again, a pretentious asshole. And maybe it's not a matter of, like, mom just needs to watch the kid. How about this? Like, if you moved in, and again, he's 22 and he owns a house. He probably moved in after this woman already lived there, which means you're the new person in that neighborhood. If your ass looked at that house, looked around at your neighbors and said, oh, everybody's got kids and the kids are always going to stay in their yards, you're a fucking moron. Well, because I know when you were a kid, you didn't stay in your own fucking yard.
Here's my problem with that take is that he did put a fence up.
Okay.
And it is his private property.
Okay.
So, like, if you're not allowed to leave like pools uncovered and stuff, especially if you don't have a fence and all that, right? But if you have a pond, there's no legal obligation to put a cover and stuff on it. But if you have a fence, right, the fence is supposed to be there to keep animals and things out or people out. They're not supposed to be back there.
Right.
So I don't feel like it's.
Hold on, he's got a koi pond. Yeah. This isn't just a pond on his property. He built the motherfucking thing. It's like putting in a pool.
Yeah.
So, yes, that motherfucker might want to cover it or make it harder for that kid to get to it.
You can't cover it. That'll hurt the fish.
Oh, it does? Oh, I have no idea.
So, there's typically in koi ponds, you want things like algae. Like, you don't want it to necessarily be overrun with algae, but like there's things that naturally occur. And then if you cover it, the algae will die. And you need sunlight.
I don't know shit about raising fish.
Yeah, it needs some sunlight.
No, I think this guy is the asshole, but I think part of the reason why this guy is an asshole is because, and by the way, I think the mom's an asshole for suing for medical bills. I think the mom's an asshole for that. I think the mom needs to take responsibility for her kid in that regard. But dude's got money to have a fucking koi pond in his backyard. Like, he ain't hurting having to replace it. And also, he said the filter got damaged.
Yeah.
How big is this koi pond? And if it's big enough, bitch, you really do have the money to do it. Yeah, so that's my stance on that one. And I don't care if people agree with me on it or not, because one of the reasons why people are going to agree is because they're going to put all the onus on the parent. Anybody who's a parent who's got multiple kids knows you can't watch them 100%. But everybody has this, as we said before, Americans have those super high fucking standards, unrealistic expectations about a lot of shit. And one of those things is parents. People have unrealistic expectations of a parent's role and responsibility. And yes, your responsibility is to watch your kid. It's to make sure your kid doesn't get hurt. It's not to make sure that the guy's fancy ass fucking koi pond isn't fucked with. Because I know if he's 22, okay, I'm betting money this guy, okay, grew up in a pretty decent family. And or his ass got in trouble at times. Oh, which means you did some shit you shouldn't have done. And so for him to then turn and look at this kid and be like, well, I already told him to stay out. I don't know why he didn't listen. Because well, you didn't fucking listen when you were his age too, bitch.
It sounds...
Sorry. It's just, he sounds pretentious.
The vibe I got from it was that he only decided to sue them after they asked him to pay the medical bills.
Yeah. It sounds like that too. It sounds retaliatory.
So it's like, well, I'm not responsible for your kid hurting himself, considering he jumped in my fucking yard.
Yeah.
So fuck you. He can pay for the damage you did to my koi pond. It sounds like that's what he.
Well, and I get that. I get that vibe from it too. But like, be the fucking adult, guy. Be the fucking adult.
All right, you got one more in you?
Yeah. Oh. I've always got time to be an asshole.
And then we can wrap it up for now.
Okay. All right. I always got time to be an asshole.
All right, go one more. All right, ask an asshole. Am I the asshole for messaging a woman privately about why she's not liked? Wait. Give me that header one more time. Am I the asshole for messaging a woman privately about why she's not liked?
Before you even go into detail on this, I'm going to say up front, I would say most of the time, no. But let's find out details, because I might change my opinion on it.
I, 33 female, am in a local dog group with a bunch of other women that are about mid-20s to late 30s.
Okay.
It's for people in the neighborhood/country who want to explore different areas, but also bring our dog and make new friends.
Sure.
A few weeks ago, a new woman joined us, mid-20s. A group of us had brunch and went for a walk with our dogs. Mm-hmm. The problem seemed to be is she has a completely different attitude to raising dogs /caring. It says carrying. I think she meant to write caring. Caring for them than honestly the rest of us. Sorry, the way this lady writes is confusing.
Should I read it?
No, it's not. It's just she had typos and stuff, so I was having trouble reading it.
Well, that's why I was saying, how about I read it?
It's not just different ideals, even if we disagree. She loudly explained her dislike for what others were doing in the group. I definitely think it's a mostly cultural thing. She's from the US. The rest of us are from the Commonwealth countries now living in the UK. So I do feel bad. I don't think she's a bad person, but her comments about every little thing and her open dislike about things we do differently were apparent. She was giving people advice and telling them that they were definitely not true. Some of the members in a separate chat I had with them talked about how they found her rude and cruel. Here's my issue. She has messaged us almost daily to hang out again, and no one would respond. It seemed like she had a good time. She sent the message about 5 different times over the course of a few days. Mm-hmm. Eventually, I felt really bad for her and sent a private message since everyone was openly ignoring her. I kept it short, just saying, I think how we raise dogs is so different, and I think overall people found it hard to be around because of the comments. I told her I don't think she'd find much support in the group because of this, if I was being honest. She was absolutely heartbroken and said she didn't even understand, and she left the group. I feel so bad. Should I have kept it in the dark?
Okay. So you are an asshole. Yes, but not for the reasons you think. You are absolutely a fucking asshole, because if you had a problem and if all the other ladies had a problem, you shouldn't have created a separate group fucking chat to talk about somebody behind their fucking back. As well as the way you describe the way she talks is very American. So cultural competence, right? Understand that she may articulate things differently than you, but understanding who she is and where she's coming from on a perspective might be a decent idea. Now, she might have been a prick about it, and she might have been judgy and criticize you, but well, we're American. As well as You should have been upfront. Like in those conversations where she says something you don't like, maybe you should have fucking told her right then and there and talked to her about it, her opinion, get some discourse going on about some shit. But instead, y'all decided to bicker behind her back and then not fucking tell her your honest opinion about her or other things. Let her believe everybody good to go. And then you're going to ignore her when she tries to reach out. And only once she bothers you enough, then you're going to say some shit. You can go fuck yourself. I think you are the asshole for that. So
she doesn't say,
not because you were honest, but because of all the other bullshit. What?
Okay, she does say in the comments, but I was wondering because she doesn't say in the original post, what it was that they disagreed about.
Yeah.
I was curious about that.
To me, it doesn't matter.
Their disagreements were about how they treat the dogs. So they have different. It seems like, from what she elaborated here, she mostly didn't like that most people didn't use a lead/leash when we walk them, and she made a huge deal about it. She crates her dog and didn't agree with me when I said I didn't after she asked me. Okay. She said my dog could have choked and died and it would be my fault. I found it to be a little rude. Yeah. She uses a shock collar and that made people uncomfortable.
Okay.
So it sounds like so she's somebody who like locks her dog up in a crate.
Yeah.
And has a shock. So that's what they were disagreeing about.
But day one, when you hang out with somebody and they have a very different value philosophy about how to treat their pet than you do, day fucking one, you should have had the conversation of like, yeah, we don't agree on this, to the point of like, maybe we shouldn't hang out anymore. Day fucking one. It shouldn't have gone on multiple times. It definitely shouldn't have gotten to a point where you're ignoring multiple messages from her. Like, to me, that's just asshole fucking behavior.
An adult conversation about.
Yeah, exactly. Fucking talk to the person. Don't, like, everybody always says, am I the asshole for tolerating somebody I dislike? Fucking tell them you dislike them up front. Don't let it string along for a while. Don't let them believe that you like them, even though you're talking shit behind their back. What the fuck is wrong with you? Sorry. I mean, that also hits home for me because I had far too many times, people like strung me along, letting me believe I was liked and appreciated and people wanted me around, when the truth was everybody decided to make jokes and talk shit about me behind my back.
Well, your autism is not an excuse to be an asshole.
You know what? Look up the fucking definition of it and you tell me how it might be contributing.
A weirdo or a creep or any of those things.
Okay. So I want to point this out because people keep saying autism isn't an excuse for the behavior they don't like. And you're right. It's not an excuse. It's a fucking explanation. So is bipolar. So is ADHD. So is anxiety. These manifest outwardly in an expression of behavior that is sometimes rude to you. It sometimes comes out as statements to make you back the fuck off. And so sometimes it'll sound brutal. Sometimes it'll sound like I'm being a prick. But that also goes for other people too. It's not just me. It's not just some people who are autistic. There's a lot of autistic people who deal with trauma. Well, one of those trauma responses that I don't see a lot of you fucking bleeding heart crying fucking victims talk about is sometimes people with trauma are assholes first because they don't want to get hurt. They don't want to open up and trust you. They're very distrusting people because they've been hurt enough. And maybe every time they got hurt, it wasn't their fucking fault. So stop victim blaming them. Why not understand that they might sound angry, but they're not really angry? Understand who the person is and see them where they're at first.
I guess.
But at the same time, if you don't like people who act like that, fucking stop bitching about them.
Because my version of that is probably turning everything into a joke or arguing semantics or being pedantic.
And it could be all of that.
But sometimes
sometimes that makes you sound like you're a pretentious prick.
I try not to be pedantic, but I still do it sometimes, and it's hard for me to not do it.
Hey, what's the difference between pedantic and semantic again?
Pedantic is like being overly concerned with details to the point where...
What's wrong with being concerned with details?
So it gets me into arguments with people because people get annoyed that they think that I'm not hearing what they're saying or that I'm focusing on all the details instead of seeing the big picture.
I've been accused of being pedantic all the time too. And it's just, I'm starting to lose track of definitions of a lot of things that are really important to have definitions.
Arguing
for.
semantics means you're arguing over the definition of a word.
Which can also be important to understand somebody else's point of view.
Right. But the reason why people find it annoying is if I'm trying to make a general point to you or I'm presenting an argument to you, if you understand what I'm saying, sometimes, yes, it is important to understand the terms that you're using.
Right.
But sometimes people, like for instance, arguments I've gotten into people where even though I understood what they were trying to say, but they were using the word wrong. So me bringing that up, they might find that annoying because it's like, well, you understood what I meant. Why do we need to argue over the definition of the word?
I, in fact, have gotten irritated at you for that.
Or the same thing with if you're trying to make a point to me and I'm nitpicking all the details of what you said.
So there are times that I get irritated by that with you. And I know you've gotten irritated with me by some of that stuff too. But it's only sometimes. And like when other people outside of us talk to us that way, it irritates me more because they don't know us as well. They actually don't know how we feel about certain things. Me and you have had so many conversations and we've known each other for so many years now that like when you get all nitpicky about details about certain things that I'm talking about, like I don't understand why you get nitpicky on it in that given moment. Then again, I should just remind myself, autism, because yes, that plays into it. And anybody who says, that's not an autistic thing, really? Would you like me to translate that for you? Sorry, I know I'm demeaning somebody right there. I'm seeing a lot of things where a lot of comments and a lot of posts and stuff online on social media stuff that is talking about how autism is not an excuse for XYZ. And they're saying a bunch of things that are all considered negative behavior, right? But I'll say this. When it comes to restrictive, okay, when it comes to rigidity in thinking, that can manifest outwardly in a lot of fucking ways that people are like, autism doesn't cause semantics. Yes, it does. It does contribute to it. Now, can non-autistic people also play semantics? Yes. Can autistic people and non-autistic people be manipulative? Yes. But it depends on the intent. Because I know a bunch of years ago, somebody accused me of trying to emotionally manipulate them. Now, they accused me of it in an argument we were having. And I asked, how the fuck was I emotionally manipulating you in this conversation? And they said, because you told me I was wrong. And I said, you are fucking wrong. I'll grab a dictionary right now and I'll show you that you're fucking wrong. We can go online and look at the social definition of this. You are fucking wrong in your understanding. That is what I'm saying. And the person was like, oh, blah, blah, blah. The problem with that conversation was they were not just wrong in the sense of like, I knew what they meant and they were wrong. It was literally, they were trying to accuse something else, not me, but somebody else of something. And they were completely fucking wrong. Like it wasn't even a slightly different word or a slightly misinterpretation of definition or even like just a broadening of the definition. I mean, they were fucking wrong. Okay. It was about LGBT somebody or other. And they were just totally fucking wrong. Like in every way, shape, or form. It wasn't even like fucking close. So I didn't actually know what they were talking about. I thought they were being a prejudiced fuck about it. And they weren't actually in the end. They had the wrong word and it sounded bad. But they accused me of emotionally manipulating them because I said they were wrong. Like that's not emotional manipulation. Yeah. I wasn't trying to tell you how you feel about it is wrong. I was telling you the word is fucking wrong.
I guess I get fixated sometimes when I see somebody.
Wait, you get hyper fixated on something?
When somebody uses a word completely wrong.
Yeah.
If it's like it's certain types of words or certain things, especially like
oh, you mean like my obsession with when people call things a phobia?
Sure.
Because I don't like you people's broadened definition of phobia. I don't like you people's social definition of phobia. Don't tack on the word phobia on something unless it's an irrational fear. And if somebody hates you because of something, that's not phobic. That's them being an ignorant prick. It is not phobic to hate somebody. It is phobic to have an irrational fucking fear of something. Sorry,
Yeah.
I take the very strict, literal fucking definition from psychology of phobia.
Yeah, the problem of me being
Yeah,
overly
sorry,
pedantic and arguing semantics with people and stuff is that even if there's probably times where I should not engage with people with that stuff.
We agree on
And there's
that.
times that maybe I do understand what the person's saying, but I'm just getting too fixated on what the words they're using.
Yeah.
But also, most people are not going to be very understanding of why I'm doing it. And even if I explain, hey, I'm not trying to be an asshole. I just fixated on the words you used. They're not going to. They don't care.
They don't give a shit. So I'll say this much. You know what got me to stop doing that? How I retrained myself to not do that anymore. And it's only been over the last 2 years that I stopped fucking like correcting language as much. Do you know why I stopped doing it, or how I got myself to stop doing it? I ask myself one question when I get that gut like feeling to like fucking do that. I ask myself one question: what's my point? What's my point in responding? And if my point is to correct them, that is silly and stupid, and I'm not doing it. Now, if my point is because I disagree with them and I think there's something to be gained out of conversating with this person, cool. But the vast majority of the time, it ain't worth it. It's not worth my time to comment, to read it, go back to it. It's not worth my fucking time because they didn't give a shit to begin with, which is why they posted something fucking stupid. It's not worth my time. And also I look at it this way too. Who am I to fucking do that? I'm nobody. I've got a bachelor's level education, in psychology, no less. My ass should not be correcting people on what the word communism means. Like I've got opinions about it, but I should not be correcting anybody on communism and socialism. My ass doesn't know enough. I also refuse to know more about it because I don't care. But like the word phobia, it's kind of why I get so fixated on when they tack on phobia to something. It's because like from a psychological standpoint, the word was fucking used as irrational fear. And that's the way I learned it. That's the way I fucking look at it. And people are using it in such a broad way to represent so many fucking comments that they just don't like. And that's part of my problem too, is you're accusing somebody of a socially inappropriate thing because you just don't like what they said. And you don't know anything about this person beyond this little statement they made. And I fucking hate that. Like every time I fucking come across a live on TikTok and some asshole is fucking like saying that somebody is phobic this, phobic that, and this and that, like all they did was type a sentence. You don't know what's in their head based on one sentence. You're assuming you even know what that sentence means.
I would play devil's advocate on that particular or those particular scenarios because I understand what they're saying. Like if somebody calls somebody homophobic, I know what they mean, even if being irrationally afraid of gay people is not what it is. It's not what they mean, but I know what they mean, so I don't really care that they're using that word.
That's why I don't correct anybody on anything online. I don't correct anybody when they use it wrong. I get what they mean, but I think
is it using it wrong?
What it is.
Is it wrong though if that's the socially accepted definition of the word?
In this regard, I think yes.
Because you're talking about like
because you can't have arachnophobia and homophobia,
right?
And
but you're talking about
things.
like phobias in the psychological sense,
yes,
and the etymological origin of the word phobia, which comes from phobos, right?
Yeah.
Phobos was like the Greek god of fear or something.
Yeah.
And that's where phobia comes from.
Something to that effect.
And so they use it as a descriptor, psychological term. But
it means
when
fear.
when you're speaking with people, in everyday parlance, right? When they use phobia for certain words, we know that they're not talking about fear because like that's how words change and evolve over time because people use them a certain way. So when people say homophobia, it's socially accepted. Everybody knows what that means.
No, I do not think most people who use it know, especially because
I'm saying
what
when I say homophobia to you, you understand what I'm trying to convey, the message I'm trying to give to you. You know I'm talking about somebody who doesn't like or hates gay people.
Yeah. So
that's
my problem is we're not calling,
accept.
But by calling somebody homophobic and not saying you fucking hate gay people, you're not calling out what it is. Like, and I think far too many people just reiterate homophobia, and it's broadened to the point where if somebody says anything you disagree with that might kind of sound like or have the population of gay or LGBT in the comment, you immediately say it's homophobic. And I find that fucking dumb. I find it wrong to do. I find it inappropriate because these people are calling somebody something and they're accusing somebody of something that a lot of the time is not actually true. They don't ask the person to follow up on their statement and ask them more detail to find out if they actually have a hate for gay people or not. Because they're using the wrong word for one. If you think somebody hates gay people, just fucking accuse somebody of hating gay people. Like that, don't say homophobia, because homophobia would mean a fear of gay people. And I don't think there's a fear of gay. I think there is a fear of losing what they believe is consistent in their life or comfortable in their life. And everybody has that fucking fear. Everybody carries fucking fears about shit they don't understand. Everybody carries that shit. But we're calling people out for a single sentence they write online. You don't know how this person truly thinks. You assume based on that sentence, you know them well enough. Oh, because I've dealt with it enough. No, you dealt with it enough. That has nothing to do with their sentence. I just have a problem, and obviously, like this is one of those things that I'm like
there's also
fucking
a lot of
adamant
people
about.
who take advantage of plausible deniability,
Right?
especially people who are extremely racist
Yes.
or sexist.
Yeah.
People who hate the gays.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say homophobic, but
Yeah.
any of those people,
Hate the gays. Yes.
the white nationalist types,
Yep.
those people
Yep.
take advantage of plausible deniability because
Right.
they use dog whistles. They'll say things that are coded where they're not explicitly saying, but those who know, they get it. It's like instead of saying
Those who know get it. You mean you assume you know what this person means?
It's called dog whistling. It's like
I
if
understand.
you make a
got
comment,
fucking kitschy term for
you
it.
make a comment that is anti-Semitic,
Yeah.
but it can be interpreted a different way.
Yeah.
But the people who get what you're saying,
Uh-huh.
like, we know those people who control Hollywood, saying stuff like that. You're not saying Jew, but you know what they're.
Hold on. And I understand that there is some of that is that way, but it's getting to a point where, okay. So here's a very minor example, but it's the example I'm going to use to try to illustrate what I'm saying. Okay. I was in a chat where they were discussing LGBT. It was one of the ones that says, why is being gay bad, or why being lesbian is the one I was looking at. Why is being lesbian bad, or why is being lesbian wrong? And this guy came in the chat, and I've been listening to it for like 15 minutes because there was a couple of good points that were.
Wait, were they trying to say why it is bad or why isn't it bad?
No. They were trying to ask the audience, why do you consider it bad? So basically they're asking people who already think being lesbian is bad to come up and talk, right? Well, this guy comes up in the chat, and the guy comes up and says, I've never met a lesbian in person. And immediately a ton of fucking people who are already in the chat and people in the comments and even the host are fucking accusing the guy of homophobia already. That was his opening step. Well, he said his name and his fucking pronouns. Oh, and age. But that was his opening statement, and everybody's jumping on his ass calling him homophobic. Yeah. Because he's never met somebody who was a lesbian. He didn't say he disliked lesbians. He didn't say anything about religion. He didn't say nothing about had a bad experience with a lesbian and dislikes them because of it. He didn't say nothing like stereotypical about lesbians, just said he'd never met one.
That he knows of.
So one person jumped on him and said, that's because you fucking hate us. Immediately, that was the response. The host actually accused him of being homophobic and saying that there are too many lesbians in America to not have met one, which is not fucking true. In fact, the entire LGBT QI plus 2S, all the extra letters that I'm forgetting about, and I apologize, which I am also a fucking member of that group. There is not enough of us to say that everybody in America has met somebody who's part of it at least once in their life. And even if they had met them, that doesn't mean they fucking discussed that shit. No, there is not enough.
According to the most recent census data, actually, sorry, not census. The Gallup poll.
Yes.
I don't know how accurate that is. 7.6%.
Oh, 7% of the nation.
7.6, so almost 8.
And I'm saying most of them probably live in big ass cities on the coastlines.
I know, I understand where people have a tendency to jump to conclusions.
Right. But my point about it is this person could have said, I've never met a lesbian, but I don't find anything wrong with it. But nobody gave the person the chance to say the second thing, to even get to the second sentence. And they jumped on it, and people in the chat were calling him homophobic and we should block him and all of it.
Wait, why would you start a chat saying, why is lesbianism wrong?
But there's a ton of it on TikTok where they will put up, why do you think being gay is wrong? What do you have
but why would you do that?
LGBT?
And then as soon as somebody talks, you're just going to shit on them and block them
That's
anyway.
what they do.
But what's the point then?
I don't know.
If you're going to try to actually have that conversation with somebody, then you need to actually let them make their point, even if you know whatever they're going to say. You're going to disagree with it, or it's going to be some horrible shit anyway. But you at least have to how you can't combat their argument if you don't let them actually make the argument.
That's part of my point. Is they read a sentence, they hear this one sentence, and immediately jump down this asshole's throat.
Otherwise, if you don't want to hear it, then why even post something? Because I can understand people would say, well, we shouldn't have to argue for it, or we shouldn't have to have those conversations. It's not our job to do that, to change people's minds. And I agree with that. It's not our job to go out there and change people's minds.
No.
But if you're posting something saying, hey,
in a live forum,
you disagree with me, let's talk about it. And then as soon as you then what's the point of that?
So there's an autistic creator, which I will not name here, mostly because I dislike everything this person does. But comes up in the FYP, and sometimes they do lives. And in one of their lives, it says, discuss autism, and the very next sentence was, why do you hate the 2S LGBTQIAA and all the rest of them that are now there? Why do you hate them? That was what the screen in front of me said, right? And I didn't go into it. I just left it up on the screen. That way I wasn't counted as one of the views. And I'm listening to them talk. And they were talking about persecution of that group in the US as if it's 1940. And none of them brought up the fucking advantages that have happened in the last 40 fucking years. The change that has happened over the last 40 fucking years. None of them brought up any of it. And they were talking about persecution and having to hide being gay. There are probably parts of this country, and there's probably still towns in this country where people still feel like they have to hide being that. But for the most part in America, or maybe just on the coastlines, I've only ever lived on the East Coast. So, for the most of my life, I only lived in, New England. So maybe we're a little bit more open and willing to accept or whatever. But they were talking as if everybody who is gay, lesbian, transgender, all these other things have to hide it as if it's criminalized. And I don't think that's true for the vast majority of people in America. I think there are places where it's still like that.
You're saying they were being hyperbolic about the level of discrimination?
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
I think the majority of it is nowadays is directed towards trans people.
Yeah.
And people don't really seem to care as much about the lesbian and gay and bisexual community. Most of the hate.
Okay, now bisexuals are completely ignored.
There's a lot of hate out there, but most of the hate, it seems people the people who are anti-LGBTQ, people have sort of forget about the gays. I mean, they still do but I'm saying that most of the hate seems to be directed towards the trans community.
Yep. More so than others. Yeah. It's just a matter of the way they were talking and sounding like they were talking. It's as if they didn't know that 80 years has passed or more since the 1940s. Actually, 100 years.
Right.
100 years. No.
Well,
the 80 years. Whatever. I don't do math.
We need to start wrapping up. But anyway, so it sounds like what you were saying is they were doing the same thing. They were having people come in only just to shit on them and block them.
Right.
Which I understand because you're asking them a contentious question. You're asking them a controversial question, something that's contentious. Why do you hate the LGBTQ?
Yeah.
But why would you even... why would you ask people to engage with that if you're not going to actually engage?
So one of the moderators,
I don't get it.
One of the moderators brought somebody up into the chat and said, I only brought you up because your picture and your name gave me vibes that you hate us already. And the person said, I don't hate anybody. And they said, well, clearly you're full of shit, and kicked him out. The fuck was the point in that? It's because
I don't really go on TikTok very much.
I know you do. I'm the one. If you give somebody a little bit of power, they will abuse the shit out of it.
So
especially if they feel as if they have no power over themselves.
I don't know if this is the same page that you're talking about, but there's a particular page that I've been on a few times, and I've actually engaged in a conversation in the chat with some of these people. This particular person, I don't know what their gender is. I think it's a woman, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And there's a moderator they have.
Yeah.
A few moderators, and the moderator likes to kind of play the tyrant is what you're talking about. Like the moderator that this person has, she will constantly block and kick people over the smallest thing.
The smallest little thing, because she's got a little bit of power. And I'm not saying she in the sense of like she's going to abuse it because she's a woman. I'm saying that you give human beings a little bit of power in some way, and they will abuse the shit.
This particular channel, they almost blocked me or us, but they didn't. But I had gotten to like I just barely. So I didn't even disagree with them. It was that they were having a conversation about what was it? I think it was something about ableism or something like that. Yeah. And somebody came in. Oh, it was about whether we should consider self-diagnosis valid or not.
Ah, okay.
And their position was that self-diagnosis is valid. And they were basically doing the same thing as what you're talking about, the LGBTQ. Basically, if you disagree with them, they would instantly block you.
Right.
But what's the point of having the question and you're inviting people to talk about why they think that self-diagnosis is not valid, but as soon as they disagree with you, you're just going to block them anyway. So what the fuck's the point?
Because they just want to shit on
somebody came into the chat and they started shitting on him, and he was talking about his opinion as to why he didn't think self-diagnosis was valid. I think that actually Tiger, what's his face?
Yeah, Ghost Tiger.
I think that we had a conversation about it. I think he might have even been in the same live.
Oh, okay.
And because he spent where he's from, he didn't understand self-diagnosis either because they have universal health care, and it was easy for him to get diagnosed. So as a perspective from somebody from the UK, he didn't understand it.
Right.
But someone like him, if he voiced his opinion, they would just instantly block him.
Right.
But me,
they're assholes.
The reason why we almost got in trouble with them is because somebody came in and they were trying to give their opinion as to why. And I pseudo defended him in the comments, just saying like, well, I think that like they may have a point about this, and that. And I was like, I said, like, I agree with you. I think that we should recognize self-diagnosis in many cases because of there's trouble with people getting access to get a diagnosis.
Yes.
But I understand why people might feel like it's invalid. And because I was defending them or trying to understand their point of view, they threatened me and said that if I kept defending them, that they were going to kick me out.
Yes, because that's how we move society forward. That's how we get people to understand. We silence the voice of anybody we don't agree with. I think that's a great idea.
Which I thought was ridiculous. Like, I'm not even saying I agree with them. I'm saying that I agree with you, but I understand why somebody might not be on the same page because there's probably information that they don't know or certain things they're unaware of, and they may not be aware of how difficult it is to get diagnosis in a lot of cases. So I was making those points as to why somebody might not agree with it for lack of having, but like they didn't want it. So what's the point of the conversation? We can't actually change people's minds unless we actually have the conversation, especially if they have information that they don't, they may be ignorant of certain facts. So unless you enlighten them, then they're not going to probably change their mind unless they're just an asshole. But you know.
And even if they are, if you are opening a public forum to talk about something, you yourself need to be open to hearing somebody else's point of view. And if not, you need to shut the fuck up and stop doing that. There's a comic.
Well, they could, maybe it's just for engagement. Like they started.
It's exactly what it's for.
It's just for engagement.
That's exactly
it's dogpiling is what it is. You dogpile on the people that disagree with you so you can shit on them. Yeah. You get a little bit of dopamine boost and you get some engagement.
But you also get a whole bunch more people to watch your shit, and then you grow yourself and you gain some money out of it for treating somebody like crap. Isn't that what people do to neurodivergent people? Isn't that what people do to minorities? They shit on them just because they don't like them. You fucking morons. Sorry. I don't think the vast majority of people are morons, and I don't think the vast majority of people who are neurodivergent are fucking morons. I think there are people in all communities who are fucking morons who make the rest of us look like shit.
I mean, there's autistic people on social media who are very rigid in their beliefs, and when people disagree with them, they shut them down.
And even yes. I think that in all populations, there is a group of them that are too stupid for their own fucking good. I could be included in that for some topics. Actually, I know I'm included in that for some topics. Anyway,
I think that there are points in time where my level of rigidity was probably similar to some of those people.
I know.
But I have grown out of that a lot. Like
Yes.
I'm more willing to look at other people's perspectives.
Wait,
And I think
autistic people are able to grow?
I think that some of these people who are on these, some of these people on TikTok, they consciously know what they're doing. They don't give a shit, or they're not aware because they haven't had that same level of personal growth, at least in that particular area that I have.
Or they don't want to. Somebody the other day in a live, yeah, guys, I flipped through TikTok way too fucking much. Somebody in a live the other day actually said that you can't train the autism out of somebody, and they started describing shit that it is not autistic behavior, but it's a learned behavior, and anything that's a learned behavior in a person, you can train out, or at least you can lessen the impact of. And mental rigidity, regardless of the causality to that rigidity, you can soften it. Period. If you don't believe that, I don't care. Last thing I want to say on this topic is there's a comic out there, and I'm going to quote something he said to an audience member who gave him some shit. The protection of freedom of speech is not to protect the speech you like; it's to protect the speech you don't. And that's just it. Like, the freedom of speech is to protect the speech you don't like, and you might not like that, but everybody's got a right to voice an opinion. Voice an opinion, not advocate for fucking violence, but voice an opinion. Okay. Just because you don't like something me and Steve says doesn't mean like fucking you should silence us. And for all the people who utilize TikTok Live as a way to fucking abuse power, fucking shut up. Anyway, moving on, because Steve did tell me a while ago that we've got to wrap this shit up. But I, unfortunately, as always, talk too much. But if you like, dislike, or agree or disagree with whatever we said in this episode, please let us know. Put up a comment, ask us questions, ask for more details. If there's something you thought I said was really stupid, ignorant, ask for more details. Talk to me about it, because maybe you see it in a way I don't. And also, maybe there's more to my opinion than just what this hour between me and Steve could possibly accumulate. Other than that, thank you very much for listening.
Oh, sorry. One more thing before we go.
Please.
The vaccine, the autism cure is almost ready to go.
Excellent.
We will be distributing it through United Healthcare and Pfizer.
Yes. So don't worry. They will deny at least 30% of the claims.
That's right.
Like, dislike, post it up, share with friends. Tell everybody to listen to our show. Thanks.
Pee pee poo poo.